So higher education is a very interesting industry in that it really is undergoing a large amount of change today. It has become very obvious to those of you who are participating in this call today, as well as those of us who are working closely with you, that higher education could really go the way of other industries that have been affected by change. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of different industries, including the publishing industry, and I actually find quite a number of interesting parallels in terms of the pressures that you as organizations face to change in ways that are driven really by the way technology is improved. And then you can find the same thing even with different technical industries. We have a nice little visual here of a VCR for those of you who remember what that is, or those of us who remember what was before the VCR. But even those kinds of concepts, right, have had to change over a number of years. So we really see higher education as in the midst of, in our opinion, for others maybe on the cusp of really trying to have a very large transformation. There's been a huge shift in U.S. consumer opinions on higher education, and it's interesting, the more that you dive into the research on this, the more you realize that in some ways these haven't really changed. People have, for the past 10 years or so, been talking a lot about the increase in cost in higher education. When you step back and look at it at a bigger picture, it really is interesting how much this space has changed in the past, 50 years. So if you think about it, I myself am a second generation in my family to attend college. It was a great point of pride to my father. My mom did not attend college, so for her, she saw it as a fantastic thing that I attended. And yet I have children of my own, and I am already telling them that they may not go to college unless they have a plan of exactly what they're going to do with that education, because it'll cost me a fortune, and then you take care of me in my retirement. So at that point, we think about what's happening from a general consumer opinion on higher education. We've gone from, that concept of everyone needs a degree, which was my generation, to, okay, what exactly is the cost benefit of that degree for my line of work? There's no longer a question of whether or not we should be thinking about sending our children to receive an additional education. The question is, what education is that, and which one is going to fund the results that they want to achieve? We also are getting into a place where I myself took out a number of loans to pay off my degree and had to work to pay those off. The student loan indebtedness surpassed credit card debt in 2011. The cost that people are achieving to go forward the process of higher education is enormous. It's an enormous burden on families. It's an enormous burden on individuals who are graduating. And yet, everyone believes they should have a degree. So how do we balance those things out? How do we balance out that need? So where does that take us as we think and move forward? When we first thought about higher education, it was sort of, I like to call it the field of dreams philosophy, right? I build an institution, and I accept students, and students graduate, and they go on to be successful. And that concept not only supported the number of institutions that have been around for hundreds of years, but it also supported the concept of institutions that are newer and the expansion of those traditional colleges because of the concept of the fact that there were more and more people who needed and deserved to receive a higher education. Doesn't exactly work that way anymore, because now we need to think about higher education as another cost and benefit that needs to be analyzed. And then, of course, there's a question of, as the population grows, and we see that population growth, is there going to be a place where we will start to see a trail off in terms of the demand? Families are actually having less children today than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so what does that mean when you think about higher education? Does it mean those families can afford to send more kids to school? Or does it mean that ultimately we'll have less potential students that are thinking about it? Now, this is a little bit misleading, and I'll be very honest about that. This is a U.S. Census Bureau analysis study, and it is true that we do have more and more numbers of international students coming into the United States looking to receive an education. So there is some supplement there to that demand coming from outside of the United States. So the Census Bureau study does not give a complete clear picture, but it does give you a sense of where this is heading.